Right. So question one says, which among the services below can you test and troubleshoot IAM and resource-based policies? So this is just asking for a service that troubleshoot IAM and resource-based policies.
Let me
Sorry, Linda, we can't hear you.
Let me go for Amazon Inspector. D.
Okay, you say D. Okay. So the key thing is, what are you doing? You are troubleshooting IAM and resource-based policies, right? Which service have this function? Anyone has a different view? I see Lawir says B.
B.
King Chitana says B. Same as Wada. So the majority seem to say B, right? So as usual, I'll take the majority and then we'll review. The key thing is always knowing what the services here are. Okay. So everyone that said B, you are correct. And so what is IAM simulator policy? We'll see why the others are wrong. So the IAM simulator policy evaluates the policy that you choose and determines the effective permission for each of the actions that you specify. The simulator uses the same policy evaluation engine that is used during real requests to AWS services. But the simulator differs from the live AWS environment in the following ways. That's what is stated. This is what it has. So with the IAM simulator, you can test and troubleshoot IAM and resource-based policies in the following ways. So the key thing about the IAM simulator, if the question was just asking this, so test and troubleshoot IAM resource-based policy. So with the IAM simulator, you can do that. So I'll just copy some of the things here. For those of you not yet familiar with the simulator, and post on our chat. So just remember that with the IAM simulator. Now the next question is why are the other ones wrong, right? We have to make sure that we know what the other ones are all about. So before going to that, who remembers what AWS Amazon Inspector is? Let's start from that one. What's the key thing words in ABS Inspector, Amazon Inspector?
Security for EC2 instances.
Sorry? I did not hear. Yeah, go ahead again. Can you hear?
Security service for EC2
Security service for EC2 instances. Okay. Anyone has something to add? All right. And then you have to know also what config is. What about AWS config? It was taught in the security model. Yeah. So let's see what those services are. So AWS config is a service that enables you to access, audit, and evaluate the configuration of your AWS resources. So config help you access, audit, and evaluate the configurations of your AWS services. And as I always say, it's always good to, if you want to get more information about that, always go to Google and just search for, sorry, it's not coming up here. Yeah, and just search for that service. And then go ahead and just read what it's all about if you want to. So it assess, audit, and evaluate configurations of your resources. So what it basically means is if you have different AWS services configured, right? You want to know how they are configured. You want to know how the services, like say you have an EC2 instance, you know, you have a security group. So AWS config can really audit and let you know that you have this particular number of security groups configured, this particular number of EC2s configured, and it can tell you which security group is assigned to which EC2 instance. That's what it means by assess, audits, and then evaluate the configurations and relationships. So it will tell you exactly how those services work. Because it will always be difficult for you to always open a security group, go and look at how it's configured. If you have 10 of them and you want to check what is behind that security group, yeah, it will be a much long process to open one after another. So config will help you assess, audit, and evaluate the configurations and relationship of your resources. That's very important to remember. Yeah. Then system manager is a service that provides a unified user interface so you can view operational data from multiple AWS services and allows you to automate operational tasks across AWS resources. Yeah, it's very important to also know what system manager is here. What can I add here? When you sign into your console, there's a possibility to go to the system manager console. And for example, when you go to the system manager console, you can select all the EC2 instances that are in your, configured in your account or in the particular region you want. And then maybe operational task will be like you want to perform, let's say, one command on all those instances. You can do that from the system manager. So when you think of system manager, always think of automation of operational tasks across AWS resources. That's the key word that you should have about AWS system manager. It allows you to automate operational management tasks. So you will see that this will always come. As I say, once you learn these services, then as you go ahead, it will make your other questions easier. So remember that. And then inspector is more of a automated security assessment service that helps improve security and compliance of applications deployed on AWS. I heard you did talk of EC2s as well. And yeah, if you come to it touches a bit about that. Why am I having this in German? Right. So automated and continual vulnerability management at scale. I know that it has to do something also as well with your EC2s, yes. So Amazon Inspector is an automated vulnerability management service that continually scans Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, so EC2, AWS Lambda functions and container workloads for software vulnerability and unintended network exposure. So just remember, you can try to you may want to figure out if there is some unintended access to your EC2 instances, right? You need inspector, but the key word is automated vulnerability management service. You know, it's always looking for software vulnerabilities in your AWS account. So keep that in mind. Yeah, and you see when you go to each account, each service, you can always come to frequently asked questions to see more. I really encourage all of you to learn to be using your the AWS documentation in this way. It will help you in quickly looking for information as well. Yeah. All right. So anyone has a question based on the services we have looked at? Okay. So let's go to the next question. And this will go for you, Edwin. Which of the following statements is true for AWS CloudTrail? So we're looking, the first thing is you should be able to remember what CloudTrail is, and then which statements below will suit CloudTrail. So one, it says CloudTrail is disabled by default for newly created AWS accounts. CloudTrail is able to capture application error logs from your EC2 instances. CloudTrail charges you for every management event trail created. When you create a trail in the AWS Management Console, the trail applies to all AWS regions by default.
I think it's B.
Okay. So you say it's B. I see two people say D, and I see another support coming for B. So two Ds and two Bs. Can one person break down so that we know which one should we take? Is it D or B? One more person. Okay, we're on a tie.
I think a B, because CloudTrail is able to capture application error logs. So CloudTrail here is always, giving out queries on where the logs are, and if there's an error log, I think CloudTrail will be able to give that.
Okay. Yeah, I hear your explanation, but can someone define CloudTrail? What actually does CloudTrail do? What questions does it answer?
CloudTrail gives the history, the activities.
Yeah, the activities were. There should be some keywords.
Yeah, AWS account.
Okay, yeah, AWS
EC2
account.
instances.
Does it include EC2 instances?
History.
When it's AWS account, you say AWS account. What about the others? Is it D or B? I just want one last person to break, then we look. I want to take the majority. So, Sally, any idea? What will you guess? Or Maureen? All right. So let's see what D says. So it's actually D. But now it comes, I heard what Lawi was saying, but this is very important about CloudTrail. As what I was saying is touching your AWS accounts, right? And AWS account is not same as application. It doesn't have anything to do with the application logs and error. It doesn't have anything to do with the workloads. So CloudTrail is always answering the question of who did what, when, and where, or what happened, at any point in your account, what service did what, who, what, and where. But application error logs is in your EC2 instances is something else. It doesn't look into the applications log. So that's why I was saying that the keyword is in your AWS account. It's looking for who did what. This is happening in your EC2 instances, error logs. is completely different. So CloudTrail is a service that enables governance, compliance, and operational auditing and risk auditing of your AWS account. With CloudTrail, you can log, continuously monitor, and retain account activity related to actions across your AWS infrastructure. Remember, it's actions. So all the API calls, when the service is trying to talk to another service, is what we call an API call, right? When you sign into your system, is what you call an API call. So all things that who did what when in your AWS account is answered by CloudTrail. But application logs is in an EC2 instances is something else. It's an application running in that EC2 instance. I don't know if those who were doubting get it. So CloudTrail will provide the event history of your AWS account, include actions taken through the management console. I was just talking like when you sign in, is one example. Even when you use the software development kit or when you go to the command line tool and other AWS services. This event entry simplifies security analysis, resource change tracking, and troubleshooting. So when you have a security team and maybe there's a breach and the account and they want to figure out what actually happened, CloudTrail is always the great place to look into. CloudTrail can figure out, so if it's looking at the configuration there, but it cannot be, it's not in EC2 because CloudTrail actually does not capture error logs. You may instead use CloudWatch logs for this purpose. So CloudWatch logs is what you will use for your EC2 instances if you want to get application errors. Yeah. Now, CloudTrail is disabled by default for newly created AWS accounts. That's not true. So that's just something to remember about the future. It is always enabled by default by all customers and will provide visibility in the past 7 days. Now, this is also something important to know about CloudTrail. So CloudTrail will track all the activity of your AWS accounts, but what will happen is that it will only have the history for the past 7 days. So if something happens 10 days ago and you want to check in your CloudTrail, you will not get that information. So it will require that maybe you may need to export your logs to an S3 bucket, for if you need to store them much more longer, because the console will only show activities for the last 7 days. CloudTrail charges you for every management event trail created. It's incorrect because CloudTrail does not charge you for the first management trail, but only the additional trails that you create after the first one. So this is a little bit detail into how CloudTrail works. You always have something called event management. And when you create the first one, you are not charged. If you create the second one, that's when you get a charge. So maybe that's just something to keep. Anyone has a question on the services here or on the explanations? Everyone is okay, yeah? At least someone should say yes. Let's not be so passive.
Everyone is okay.
Yes.
When we ask a
I'm
question,
okay.
yeah, don't be so passive, please. It's me, okay. Right, so you can always go back to read more about CloudTrail if you just want to pick the few things that we have discussed. You can then see here. You can always go through that. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question. That one will be for Kinyoi. AWS Identity and Access Management enables you to manage access to AWS services and resources securely. Which of the following best describe what an account alias is in IAM? Account alias is in IAM. So is it?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a substitute for an account ID in the web address for your account.
Okay. So you say A. I see what other supports. Edwin supports, so 3 people say A. Account alias. I think I need to sign to my console and then maybe highlight for those who don't know. But a substitute for an account ID in the web address of your account, right? So the key point we are looking here is what's an account alias in IAM. So everyone should remember that. Let's see if that's correct. Also, we're answering that. So, so that's correct for everyone who said A. Yeah. Okay, good. We have that here. Okay. So an account alias substitute for an account ID in the web address for your account. You can create and manage an account alias on the AWS Management Console or from a CLI or an API call. You use an account alias when you prefer to use a more friendly account name rather than the long string of numbers. Because you always have this in your account, you may want to change it, right? So, so that rather than you normally log into this, but this numbers is always a bit hard to remember. You may decide, like in this case, put Tutorial Dojo. We could have put with on cloud if it was, and then what happens is that if you create an AWS account alias for your AWS account ID, say Tutorials Dojo, your sign-in page URL looks like the following example, right? So it's just, that should be straightforward what it is. I shared that also on the chat. And then of course, the other values here are just out of place, nothing to explain. So you just need to remember what an account alias is, right? Substitute for an account ID. Okay, thank you. The next question here goes to Ada. Which of the following IAM identities is associated with the access keys that are used in managing your cloud resources through the AWS command line interface? So which of the following IAM identities is associated with the access keys that are used in managing your cloud resources through the command line?
I am user.
Okay. Say IAM user. B, can you support that? Anyone else?
Yes, I am user.
Okay. It means supports that as well. So 3 people. So the key point here is these are all identities, right? But the one is which one is associated to access keys that are used in managing your cloud resources. So the highest of you say I am user. Let's check and see. And indeed, that's correct. When you want to use the CLI, you always need the access keys from an IAM user. That's what you should remember very well. And access keys is made of 2 parts: access key ID and secret access key. We did cover that in the IAM module. So if you've forgotten, you can look back at that. So access keys is like a username and a password, and it helps you. So when you configure your CLI, your command line interface, and rather than going to your console, then you have the possibility to just use, yeah, you don't need to always type your username and password. The access keys will play that. We should make sure we remember what an IAM role is, what an IAM group is used for, and what an IAM policy is, right? So I'll leave that. And we go to the next question. Anyone has a worry regarding access keys? Yeah, all right. So there are three different ways to access the AWS resources. Who remembers what are those different three ways? How can you access AWS resources?
The management console, command line interface, and SDKs.
Thank you. So you have the management console, the command line, and the SDK. Yeah, based on those different ways to access AWS resources, in which instance do you require the access keys?
For the command line and the SDK.
Yes, you need the command line and the SDK. And for the console, you need a
User ID and password.
username and password, right? So those three ways to access the CLIs, the AWS resources is important, right? And then, so the command line, the SDK, and the management console. Most of the time we go through the management console. The management console is going to the, when you sign in, this is what we say. If I come here and I click to sign in, for example, I'm going through the management console. That's one way to log in, right? So if I click here, okay, it goes directly to my account. Normally I will have, it's because I used this yesterday. So normally it will have given me the username and the password. So this is the automatic login. So it goes straight to my AWS account. I can access resources. The other way is if you've configured AWS in your command line interface. So there's, you see, it can recognize AWS. It asks me, I just type AWS, it will say, maybe I need help. The command line offers some kind of help if you are struggling to work with. And before I'm able to use this, I have to I have to configure the access keys that are required, right? To use, to be able to use this, to use from the command line. So from the command line here, I can create an EC2 instance, I can create an S3 bucket, I can do all the other things that I will have done through the management console, but using commands. So that's what we mean by the command line interface. There's another one, the SDK. Actually, I've never used that, which is you also need to configure access keys, right? So that was just a reminder on what we did in our policies. So the next question is for you, Sally. A company is using Amazon S3 to store their static media content, such as photos and videos. Which of the following should you use to provide specific users access to the bucket? Sally, are you there? Okay, seems Sally is not there. So I've covered everyone there. So Team Lawir, who wants to pick that from your team? Please, okay, I see Lawir, you say B, bucket policy. Sorry?
Bucket policy.
Okay, Edwin supports that. Okay, so when it comes to accessing when it comes to S3 bucket policy is one way to give specific user access. Yeah. The other one, security group, we should know where that it works. We should know where network access control is work. SSH. It sounds like we did answer this last time. Okay. The next question is still for Team Lawir. Please answer that. In the AWS shared responsibility model, whose responsibility is it to patch the host operating system of an Amazon EC2 instance? So that's still for Team Lawir first. Who is the next person to answer? So when it comes to the shared responsibility, the key part of the question is, who is to patch the host operating system of an Amazon EC2 instance? Is it the customer? Is it AWS? Is it neither AWS nor the customer, or is it both of them? Similarly, says B. Prada says C. If you say nobody should, someone should have that responsibility. It cannot be AWS, no, it cannot be that. You have to remove that. That already eliminates it. Can you says B? So yeah, we have more of B coming up. So yeah, Guada corrects to B. So the question is, let's see, this comes with the diagram, right? This should be something that should immediately rings in everyone's mind when you see that question. There is always, if you remember when we did EC2, we had the guest operating system, and what's the other operating system we have? There are two. We have the guest operating system, and which one else as well?
The host or hypervisor.
Thank you, Kinye. So you always have, and you all are so silent. Let me bring this up, but thank you, Kinye. You always have the guest operating system, and you always have the host operating system. And the key part you should remember is the guest operating system is managed by the customer, and the host operating system is managed by AWS, because the host operating system is like, it's what is helping you. You can just think of it as this compute in the cloud I'm looking for. So if you go back to your notes on compute, this one should be the one that should always come very fast. Okay, if you look at this diagram, what's going on? You always have AWS data centers, and in those data centers you find a host server. That host server will always have a hypervisor, which is like the host operating system. It is what is like and then on that host operating system, because you have these big hosts that are sitting in data centers, and it is in these hosts that you are able to install guest operating system. And this guest operating system is what we call the virtual machines, and it's what AWS call EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. So Elastic Compute Cloud is just a virtual machine, and then the hypervisor is like the brain that decides how much CPU goes to each operating system. You know, it's sitting here and it's doing all the thinking and breaking down. If you go back to, I don't know why this is like that. Yeah, if you go back to when we were explaining virtualization 101, and we said, okay, you have the host or the hypervisor, then because you have the CPU and the hardware, you instead install a hypervisor, and then on top of that hypervisor, you then can install guest operating system, and they'll have applications, and this will act like independent machines, right? And the hypervisor is then in charge of knowing how much CPU network, it's the brain that's helping this operating system to have access to the hardware. But the guest operating system is always managed by the customer. So when you have an EC2 instance, and you have Windows running on it or Linux running on it, you'll be the one managing it, right? But the host operating system is managed by AWS. So the host operating system of an EC2 instance is managed by AWS. But if you are talking about the guest operating system, it will be by the customer. So these other options are wrong. So it's a shared responsibility model that you can talk of here. I hope that should be clear. And this goes to discuss a little bit more about things that you inherit regarding the shared responsibility model. The things that you inherit, controls which a customer fully inherits from AWS is the physical and environmental controls. So what you inherit when you are using AWS is, for example, that AWS is always taking charge of the data center as a physical environment. You are not part of it, right? They control it for you. And yeah, and the hardware. Shared controls. There are some things that are shared. Patch management. So AWS is responsible for patching and fixing flaws within the infrastructure, but customers are responsible for patching their guest operating system and applications. So that's why AWS provide all those tools that you can use to manage your guest operating system, right? Configuration management maintains the configuration and infrastructure devices, but the customer is responsible for configuring their own guest operating system. So these are shared controls. What AWS is doing and what you are doing. This one, both of you are in charge of configuration management. But what is the AWS configuring? The infrastructure itself, but you are configuring the guest operating system. Awareness and training is a shared responsibility. AWS will train the AWS employees about AWS, and the customer is also supposed to train their own employees about AWS services. Customer-specific controls, these are the ones that are solely what the customer is responsible for. Service and communications, protection of zone security may require a customer to route a zone data within security environments. These are very important points. We're going to see questions that we'll be trying to ask you on this. So I'm just trying to provide that information to you ahead of time. I've posted all of that on chat. Okay. Yes.
I have a problem with that inherited responsibility, physical and environmental control.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the customer controlling in terms of security with physical and environmental control?
No, you are not actually controlling, you are just inheriting, because you are just inheriting what AWS is already doing. So you are inheriting, AWS is doing the physical and environmental control, and all you do is you are just inheriting what it's doing. It's not like you are doing something. So how can I explain it? So they inherit, the word they inherit does not mean that you as a customer, you will have to do, you have to
Put security people around, all that stuff. That's what I thought about the physical and environmental.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm saying that when they talk about physical and environmental control, I think of handling the hardwares and the putting the physical security guard around.
Yes. So like in a data center, right? They will build walls around the data center. They will do, put some kind of, those are the physical controls. Maybe before you get in, you go through a gate and you are monitored. So all of that is done by AWS, right? But you as a customer, you just inherit all of that. Because if you had your own data center, you have to do all of that, right? But because you are using AWS, you just inherited those controls. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, I understand. I had a similar problem last week, and then I was trying to explain, but I had the problem explaining it this way.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.
Good to know it helps.
Yes, even somebody in the chat saying that he needed that explanation.
I see. Okay, that's good. I see Linda is struggling to join. Internet issues. Anderson. Surely internet issues. The same thing with Brandon Leslie. But who couldn't join? So I think that's the disadvantage, unfortunately, for some people who want to attend, but yeah, can join. Okay, right. So let's continue, please. I hope you, I don't know. Okay, so the next question is which service okay, finally Linda joined, it seems. That's good. I'm sure it's internet connection, Linda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. So which service in AWS protects your resource from common DDoS attacks? This is for Team Will who answered that from you?
The answer is AWS Shield.
That's very fast. Yeah, said that. Okay, that's good. So that's why it's good to ask questions. I didn't see that on chat, so Kenya got that. As well, saying that she needed that explanation. So most of you are saying D. So let's check if that's correct. And of course it's correct. That's what the thing I know now that, okay, everyone knows. Immediately you see distributed denial of service, make sure you know what that is in full. Distributed denial of service, think of Shield, right? So AWS Shield is a managed distributed denial of service protection service that safeguards applications running on AWS cloud. AWS Shield provides always on dictation and automatic inline mitigations that minimize application downtime and latency. So there's no need to engage AWS support to benefit from DDoS protection. Keep in mind that there are always two forms of AWS Shield. You have the standard and you have the advanced. Every customer benefits from the standard, but the advanced is the one that you pay, right? And when you use advanced standard Shield, it will look into Amazon CloudFront, Amazon Route 53, and all of this, and layer 3 against all known this thing of layer 3. So just keep in mind when you use advanced, you have more features that are enabled. So, and you pay for the advanced, if you pick AWS Shield, the advanced option, you have to pay some money for that. So that was a good one. Not much to add there. Okay, the other ones are wrong, but I hope everyone knows what inspector is. We just reviewed that. Key thing, what are the keywords for inspector again? Automated security vulnerability. Automated security assessment, automated security assessment service that helps you security and compliance of applications deployed in AWS. So it always look for vulnerabilities that are present in your applications. And it can also check unintended access of EC2. We did look at that, right? Unintended access of EC2. That's what we look in question and answers. Unintended network exposure. So if you got unintended access through the network for your EC2 instance, for example. So make sure you capture that. We should know what security groups are, and always in the EC2 level. WAF, immediately you see WAF, think of common web exploits, SQL injection. Yeah, that should be important. All right. Okay. Let's move to the next question. A customer wants to further secure his network beyond security group and network access control list. We did answer this last time.
Yes, we did.
Okay. I want us to skip. I don't know if we can be able to finish the questions. Which of the following is needed to retrieve a list of your EC2 instances using the AWS CLI? This is going to Team Lawir, the third person in that group. So what's the question talking about? So which of the following is needed to retrieve a list of your EC2 instances using the AWS CLI? That was not for you, Guada. Wait first for Team Lawi to answer. Now the Team Lawi says C. C says MFA. Okay, Kinyo says B. Now you are trying to retrieve a list of EC2 instances. Why will it be MFA? MFA is multi-factor authentication. So this question is just playing in mind. What do you need when you want to use the CLI?
Command line interface.
Yeah, so the question is asking, what do you need when you want to use the CLI? We just discussed about that, right? What do you normally need to work from the CLI? What is it that you need?
Access keys.
Access keys.
Access keys.
We were just discussing, yeah. We were discussing about the different ways to access AWS resources, and we were just pointing about CLI and access keys. MFA is multi-factor authentication, right? And it's just an extra security layer when you are using the management console. You can set an MFA. Like in my, it's just that I went directly to my account. Normally, you can set an MFA for that. Yeah, so you see the questions at times are just playing with your mind. So just make sure that I don't have it. I think that was okay. Okay, now the last person in Team Lawi, in the shared responsibility model, which of the following options below is a shared control between AWS and the customer? We just reviewed that. So the last person in Team Lawi, what would be the answer? Which of the following, we're looking at a shared control between AWS and the customer. Okay, I see B. What do the others think? Kenya says B. Thank you. And everyone says B. So that's just what we were talking about. Shared control is always patch management, configuration management, awareness and training falls under shared control. With patch management, AWS will do it in the infrastructure, customer will do it on the guest operating system and applications. With configuration management, AWS will configure the infrastructure. So all the hosts that are in the data centers, AWS is in charge of configuring those hosts, of installing the host operating system, that's hypervisor configuring it, but the customer is responsible for configuring the guest operating system, database and applications. And then we've just talked about training. So those are the three shared controls. And then the other ones, we just touched them. So remember to really be very comfortable with those. Okay, now we're coming back again. We stand back with Edwin. I noticed we lost a few people, but Linda is back. So maybe Linda, since your connection is good before it goes away, let's come back to you, right? So there is an incident with your team where an S3 object was deleted using an account without the owner's knowledge. So we have an S3 object that was deleted without the owner's knowledge. What can be done to prevent unauthorized deletion of your S3 objects? That's for you, Linda. Linda, are you there? Okay, maybe it's connection. Edwin, you want to try that so that we move ahead?
The tricky one. I'll go for D.
Okay, you say D.
B.
Okay, I see more people say B. Kinyanakwada. Okay, so that's why we revise. So no worries. Let's look into 2 people say B. And yeah, there's something called does everyone remember how MFA works? Can someone say briefly how MFA works? Anyone remember?
Yeah, it's the multi-factor authentication
Right.
where to access, for example, an AWS account, it will ask for another authentication depending on which one you choose. Maybe OT or Google Authenticate.
Yes. So that's a very good one. So the key thing is before you access, it will ask you to provide a code that Authenticator has or Google Authentic, right? That's what you are saying, right? Edwin, I'm just confirming what you are saying.
Yes.
Like, yes. Like if you look into this I always recommend everyone to use but Authy because you can install it on your computer, you can install it on your phone, and you can install it in many devices and it will sync. That means that if you are not able, if it happens that something happens to your computer and you can't access it, and you go somewhere else and you want to sign on your AWS account, you will use the same Authy that is in your mobile phone. So I like Authy because you can install it in more than one place. Always think of a single point of failure. So that a single point of failure is always referring to a situation where you have everything in one place. And if that fails, everything break, right? So Authy gives that possibility to install on your laptop. So I have this installed on my laptop, I have it installed on my phone, and I have it installed on my tablet. And if anything, if I'm on the way, I will always have that. So the authenticator will always have a code like this that is changing every 30 seconds, for example, right? So it's the same thing here for the S3 bucket. It requires that just to prevent that, you should be the right person doing the deletion. You go to delete, they will ask you to give a code to ensure that you really are the one, because the key point here was deleted using an account without the owner's knowledge, right? So that's what MFA is. And in S3, you can enable MFA as an extra layer of protection. So just think of MFA as an extra layer of protection. Yeah, this is useful for preventing on. So by setting up MFA, you add an extra layer of protection for your AWS accounts. This is useful for preventing unwanted access to your AWS resources. But for S3, once versioning is enabled for your objects, you can set up MFA delete so that deleting objects require an additional MFA authentication. What I can point out here that you should pick out is that versioning has to be enabled first before you set up MFA delete, right? So just keep this in mind, and I'll send that in chat again. With the screenshot. I encourage you that if you have a Word document where you are copying and pasting some of the things I shared, that will be better, because when you come to chat later on to scroll and see this, you may realize that it may be a very tedious task. But yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I hope we'll finish this. We should have like 5 more questions to go, because we did answer this last time. The key thing is knowing the difference between the user pool and identity pool. So make sure you check that. Which of the following instances is better to use IAM roles data rather than IAM users, select 2. This is for you, Edwin. So which of the following instances is it better to use I am roles rather than I am users? Select 2. So here is trying to see if you know the difference between I am role and I am users. The first one says that if you have employees who will constantly need access to your AWS resources, when you have outside entities that need to perform specific actions in your AWS account, when you want to provide AWS services permissions to do certain actions, when you need a GUI to interact with your AWS account, when you need an administrator to handle the AWS account for you. So which of the 2 will be better to use for I am roles rather than users?
C, I know C is 1, and
Sorry,
B and C.
D and C, or you say B and C?
B.
Oh, sorry, B and C. Okay. I see more people say B and C. So let's check on that. Right, that's correct. So I am roles, for those who are doubting, when you have an outside entity that needs to perform specific actions in your AWS account, outside entity here means, let's say you have your own AWS account and you have another account, say account A and account B, and maybe you want a user from account B to do some actions in account A. So this is going to be temporary. So it's always better to use an I am role, because I am role, the key thing is I am role always have temporary credentials, right? But I am user have permanent credentials, and we always try to minimize. Not that you can use, of course, an I am user, but from recommended practices, you should use an I am role because you want it to be temporary credentials. And then, of course, when you want to provide, that's the one that we've always given for I am role. If you want the EC2 instance to, let's say, access an S3 bucket, you always give an I am role. If you want another resource to access another resource, always think of using I am role. Yeah. Okay. Next question. We answered this last time. An employee is asking for access to your S3 bucket. What should be the level of access that you should provide to him? We did answer this. A customer needs to identify the I am user who terminated their production EC2 instance in AWS. Which service should they use in this situation? We did answer this. Who knows the answer again?
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Because again, it's who did what where. So please make sure that you are checking that. We did answer that in the last recording. Which of the following is part of the best practices in securing your AWS account? Which of the following is part of the best practices in securing your AWS account? That's for you, Kinye.
It's D. Create an I am user with admin privileges instead of using root.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd find B.
B is, see, B says only. Should you always enable MFA only on your root account or on all accounts? Well, that's why this is wrong, right? You should always enable MFA on your root account, but you should do it also on all accounts. It should not be only on the root account. So I think we did this. I was just trying to be a bit fast there. So if you notice here, MFA should be enabled as much as possible for every account to prevent others from maliciously log into it. It shouldn't be just on the root account. So that's why that one. Right. So you are permitted to conduct security assessment and penetration testing without prior approval against which AWS resources. Select two. Now this is a question that tests about, I think, but that is for you. You want to conduct security assessment and penetration testing without pre-approval, because there are some services that always require that you should get approval from AWS. Which will those services be? When you want to conduct security assessment and penetration testing. There are a list of services for that. B and D, you say. Anyone has a different view? Oh no, I see. Okay, Kinye and Linda already answered. That was for Guada, but that's okay. So two people have that. Let's see. Where is B and D? All right, it's B and D. So it says that, so the key permitted services. So to do, AWS customers are welcome to carry out security assessments or penetration tests against their AWS infrastructure without prior approval to a few services only, right? This is one of those things you just have to learn. So permitted services that you can conduct security assessment against your resources without reaching out to AWS first is the Amazon EC2, NAT gateways, Elastic Load Balancers, RDS, CloudFront, Aurora API gateways, Lambda and Lambda Edge. You know, these are all the ones you can do with Elastic Beanstalk. I don't know how you guys will find a way to remember it, but do it as Linda and Guada, as well as Kinyoy. They remember what this is, but prohibited activities. It's like DNS zone walking. Of course, it will be a long way to explain to you what that is at the moment, but just know that DNS zone walking through Amazon Law 53, denial of service, simulated DDoS, simulated DDoS, port flooding, protocol flooding, request flooding. These are all prohibited activities. So if you don't know that, figure out a way you can remember that before going to the exam. Maybe you keep revising it, and then the day you are going. And after the exam, just know that not everyone always remember all of this. Honestly, yeah, when preparing for the exam, I did remember most of those. Now, of course, I will know very well the things that I can immediately know that they will not be part of it. Is like distributed denials of service, port flooding, protocol flooding, because AWS Shield is trying to prevent all of these things from happening. And so AWS cannot be, they're trying to prevent distributed denial of service and then allowing you again to simulate it, because you put a lot of strain in them. They will think that it's an attack. So I'll easily know that these are kind of things that are rejected just by general knowledge. And then maybe, yeah, we'll try to figure the other ones. So you always see some of these things that are many. At times you know them when you go to the exam, and as you work and get more experience, they can always be on your mind. But yeah, at times you won't remember. An AWS customer, as an AWS customer, what offering do you naturally inherit from AWS after you sign in? I know that we did answer this last time, but a few people did struggle. So what is it that you inherit after you sign up? We did answer this. Everyone should be shouting the answer. Yeah, and it's someone from Team Lawi that was struggling. So I think they learned the correct answer last time. Thank you. So yeah, all the best practices, that's what you inherit, right? As an AWS customer, what offering do you naturally inherit? It is the best practices of AWS policy, architecture, and operational processes built to satisfy the requirements, and not the other ones. Okay. I think we have covered all the questions. I know that most of these ones now, from what I see, we were supposed to answer 16 questions. I think we have seen about 2 or 3 questions, and we're on question 19. So most of these ones are the ones that we answered last week. But let's just then continue, and then because the good thing is, we'll then I'll be able to generate the PDF file when we answer all the questions, and then share it back for everyone to look at it. Which of the following are the best practices that can help secure your AWS resources using IAM service? Anyone can answer this one. I'll leave it a free try. So
Grant least privilege, that's A. B. And lock away your AWS root user access keys.
okay,
B and
the last
E.
one. B and E, right? I'm sure Edwin wants to say E. So B and E here, right? So best practices to secure your resources. You always grant least privilege, and for the root account, you always make sure you lock the access keys. Remember, access keys is what you use. Thank you as well, Linda. It's what you use to access your through the command line. And as again, the root account should not be used for doing normal work. You always create a separate user, and then that's the one that you'll be using to do your normal work, right? If you notice here, I signed to my account, but I have a user I created called comadmin, and comadmin is the one that I use in doing when I'm running any AWS workloads or running any lab sessions I have. Which of the following is typically used to secure your VPC subnets? Everyone should shout this answer. Why would that be?
NACL.
It's only okay you say NACL. What about the others? You are securing your VPC subnet. What should the answer be? Are you guys awake or sleeping?
We are there, sir.
So what should the answer be? Yeah.
Is it network ACL?
Yeah, so that is key. Said NACL as well, network ACL. What about you, Linda? What about you, Tim Lawil? Tim Lawil, what should the answer be? Where were you quiet, Tim Lawil? 4 of you.
It's D. It's D. It's D.
Is D? Where were you guys quiet? I want everyone, if at this point, everyone should remember that. What if it was used to secure your EC2 instance? What would be the answer?
The security group.
Yeah. So I want everyone to just see this. These are the kind of questions that if you see in the exam, you should just click and go. You shouldn't, if you are doubting, I mean, of course, I encourage everyone to always read a mixture because I'd answer the question. But what I'm trying to say is get so familiar that immediately you see securing VPC subnet, NACL should come into your mind. If it's securing EC2 security group, and of course, then know what IAM and config is. Yeah. Okay, good. Let's go to next one, security and compliance. A customer has recently experienced an SQL injection attack. A service should immediately start coming to your mind. On their web applications database hosted in EC2, they submitted a compliant ticket to AWS. What should be the response of AWS? We did that last time. What should be the response? Who wants to pick the answer?
PC.
C.
C.
C. Okay. Thanks. Any other person? AWS should not be liable for damages since the customer should have properly patched the EC2.
D. D.
Okay, I see D. Okay, I see D again from Linda.
Z. Support.
Okay, more D. AWS should reiterate that the customer is responsible for security of the applications in the cloud. Which service will help in this? When you see SQL injection, which service come to mind?
WAF.
Application server.
Wow.
WAF,
WAF.
right. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's great. So yeah, so with WAF should be responsible for doing that. And that's why AWS created for people. Good. Which of the following security group rules are valid? Select two. Now we did have a nice one discussing this last time as well. So who remembers? Which of the following security group rules are valid? The key point was dealing with, let me allow for minds to reflect again.
I tried A and D.
A and D.
Yeah.
Okay. So A and D. Any other person?
D and D.
B and D. A and D. So two people say A and D, one says B and D. Okay, I'll just leave those ticks and then let's check and see which one is wrong. So it's actually A and D. So the key point here is address range as source. So when you have the source, when you are creating a role, these are the parameters you always have. And in the source, one option is to have a range of address. The 0.0.0.0/0 always mean any IP address, right? So that's the first thing. You can have a range. So that's that one. You can have a security group as a group ID as a source. So in this case here, this is a security group ID. You cannot have an IP address as source because this is outbound. So when it's outbound, you can't have an IP address as source. Outbound HTTP with host name as destination. You can't have a host name listed as destination. Then inbound TCP with instance ID as source. You can't have an instance ID as source. So the key point is always remember that address range as source, security group ID. Yeah. And the others are incorrect. And this one outbound as IP address as source is not possible. So since it's outbound, you should specify instead the allowed destination instead. So not the IP, not the source. Because we are talking about outbound. Outbound means it's coming and going to a destination. So those are the key things to capture here. I don't know if that helps, Mike. Sorry, I'm saying Mike, Edwin. Yeah.
Yes, it does. I was mixing up the outbound.
Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, good. We answered this. Which of the following is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity and unauthorized behavior to protect your AWS accounts and workload? Which service is that? Yeah, Team La, we shout B. Another
Amazon
person?
JDBC.
Okay, yeah, what other you say B?
B.
Great. Yes, everyone, that's good. It should be guard duty. So always the keywords is here is threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity and authorized behavior on your workloads and AWS accounts. At times, the other point is it uses machine learning algorithm actually to be able to do that. In case you see a question, look into that. But yes, guard duty, we've mentioned WAF, we've mentioned Shield. Messi is also another important one. Who knows what Messi is always doing? Amazon
It
Messi.
discovers and stores personal information.
Right. It discovers PII data, right? Personal identifiable information. It's always referred to as PII in most cases. So it uses also machine learning to automatically discover, classify, and protect sensitive data. This sensitive data is what is always called PII. Let me see what the documentation has again. So it's very important. Everyone should learn to remember what Messi is, because so that when you sit in the exam and you see the series, you say, don't be in a situation of, I thought I had to remember this. But yeah, it uses machine learning, and you see what are the key benefits of Messi? Messi uses machine learning and pattern matching to discover sensitive data at scale in a cost-efficient way. Messi automatically dictates a large and growing list of sensitive data types, including personal identifiable information, PII, such as names, address, and credit card numbers, right? So when Messi discovered these, because they are sensitive information, it will blot them out, right? It also gives you constant visibility of your data stored in Amazon S3. So I will put this on chat, and I really encourage you to remember what Messi is and what it does. Each time if you are reading a question and you start seeing personal identifier information, just know that it's likely it could be Messi, right? So just I've shared that on chat for those keeping notes. Right. What is the best way to keep track of all activities made in your AWS account? What is the question? What is the answer? All activities made in your AWS account. Which service is doing that?
CloudTrail.
Nice. Any other person? Where are the others? Timina says A. What about the others? Linda, Edwin. I want everyone to say something.
A.
Yes, Guada says A.
A.
Linda says A. Did Linda say something? Edwin says A. So you are trying to keep track of all activities. Remember in your account, that's just what we did talk again about CloudTrail. It's always checking for, where is the keyword here? CloudTrail is auditing, operational auditing and risk auditing of your AWS account. With CloudTrail, you can log and continuously monitor and retain account activity. So all activities, CloudTrail is in charge of that. For security purposes, a company needs to download compliance-related documents in AWS, such as ISO certifications, payment card industry, and service organization control reports. Where can you find these files? We didn't do that one. So where can you find these files?
AWS artifacts.
Great. Can says artifact. What about the other ones? Of course, now it will be easy to eliminate CloudTrail, right? You see, if you know CloudTrail very well, you just reshare, you just know that it's not part of the answer. You then concentrate on the others. We did look at trusted advisor, certificate manager. Even the name will tell you that maybe this is not it. But don't let this, when you see me see ISO certifications and you'll be thinking about certificate manager, but this is has to do with something else, security SSL, when you want to do SSL certificates. So in general, AWS Artifact is where you go for a central resource or compliance related information that matters. It provides on-demand access to security and compliance reports. So when you think of AWS Artifact, think of getting security and compliance reports and select online agreements, right? and it has to do with, you see, payment card industry, certification, accreditations, all the agreements that you have answered and everything. So it's a very important service as well. Know what AWS Artifact is. As I say, certificate manager is instead when you want to provide, deploy public and private secure SSL certificates, right? I will say it's also a good service to know what it is. So I'll copy and paste this on chat. What it is. Right. I think we had everything. In compliance with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act federal law, a US-based company is required to provide SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports of their cloud resources. Where are these AWS compliance documents located? Who will answer that?
Artifact.
See, Tim Lawe, you are a bit quiet. Are you with us?
We have no idea about that, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, so but you see the question, right?
Yeah.
So you are required to provide SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports of their cloud resources. So it's asking where are these compliance documents located? So it's almost similar to the question we just saw. Let me go back to 25. It was saying that for security audit purposes, a company needs to download compliance related documents in AWS. You see compliance related documents, and 26 is still talking about, you are looking, where are these AWS compliance documents located? So even though it goes to specify them here, it is the same question that we had here, and we said it was Artifact, right? I know I'm a bit fast now because I'm assuming that we touched this, but so when you want to get always compliance related documents, you need to always go to artifacts. That's the key word. AWS compliance document, where are they located? The names may be stated, but don't bother about the names. There are so many different types of them, but the keyword is where to find them, and it's artifact. Organization is for account management. Certificate manager, I was just explaining what it was. AWS GovCloud is just something else. Yeah. All right. AWS GovCloud is just an AWS region, isolated AWS region used by the, I think, US government. So it's isolated. It allows US government and agencies to more sensitive workloads there. Right?
Thank you, sir.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So let's move to the next question and finish this. Which of the following policies grant permissions required to access Amazon S3? Which ones did we agree on last time? Someone had this wrong and we corrected it. Who wants to pick the necessary
Bucket
permissions?
policies, bucket policies and users policies.
Okay, well, that says A and C. Any other person? A and D. Okay, Edwin, let's see. You have to correct that. It's not object policy, it's user policy, right? So D, we don't have, we have but A and C when you want to grant permissions to your S3 bucket. But no worries, that's why we do the revision so that everyone gets that. So just make sure you capture that when you are thinking of granting permissions to S3 resources, is bucket policy and user policy. All right, the next question, and then that's before the last one. What is the most secure way to provide application temporary access to resources? Without looking at the answers, what should come to mind? Kenya says, I am Rose. What about the others?
Yeah, she's right. I am Ru.
I am Ro. Yeah. Edwin says, I am, and then specifically it's I am Ro. So, if you have that, I know we did this last time. So I'll just click the answer so that you check that when I share the PDF. Which of the following is true if you store your data in AWS? AWS has the right to review any data stored for potential threats. Is that true?
True.
What about the
You
others?
are the owner of the data you store in AWS. B.
Yeah, okay. I was asking if this is true. So yeah, you are the owner. So that is false. So when you store data, you are the owner, right? So all data are stored durably and redundantly in different AZs. Is that true? Is all data always stored redundantly and durably in different AZs? That's not true, right? You have to always decide whether you want to store it like that. Encryption is required for all data at rest and in transit. Is that true? It's not, right? Because you still have to configure encryption. It's not like it's required. You don't have to, it's not a compulsory thing to do. You can do it if you want to. So it's also important to know why the others are wrong and make sure. So data is not always stored in different AZs. You still have to, you are the one who has to decide it. Encryption is it's not compulsory, and AWS cannot access your information. So you are the owner is correct. So the last one, which service lets you create rules to filter web traffic based on conditions that include IP addresses, HTTP headers, or custom URIs? What should be coming to mind? We are filtering web traffic. Thank you. Kenya says WAF. Edwin says WAF. So when you are filtering web traffic, security group is for EC2, network SCLs is for, so your Subnet's trusted advisor is when you are trying to, it's just a tool to help you when you are trying to do how to look at your workflows. And remember, with trusted advisor, you have checks, different checks, right? And depending on the support plan you can have more or not. So when you are doing web filtering, always think of WAF. Right. So that was it. And then now I have the opportunity to create a PDF file. Let me see. And then I'll share this on, it will be easy for others to catch up on that. Okay, let me stop recording.